Novarro was one of the most popular actors of the 1920s. He was also Mexican, born in Durango on February 6, 1899. He quickly rose to stardom in Hollywood and played any number of very colorful roles, except for Mexican ones. So the question is, why not? The reason is this guy, the greaser. This is no Iberius Sergeant Gonzalez. This is the image that Hollywood spread about Mexicans and other Latin Americans who were often lumped together under the same name throughout the early days of cinema. The greaser was the most vile villain on the screen, but inevitably there would be a white hero, often a cowboy, who would come and subdue the greaser and save the day. Author of Bad Men, Bandits, and Folk Heroes Juan J. Alonso says this: most films about the Mexican Revolution made during the 1910s, whether for or against the struggle, imagine the Mexican as the Anglo's ethical and physical inferior, and even movies supporting the revolution show the Mexican in need of the Anglo hero's aid. Several countries, including Mexico and Panama, banned films that featured negative portrayals of people south of the border, greasy, prone to acts of random violence, and with a penchant for funny faces. Hollywood laid off, but only for a while. For our purposes, though, he ends right here and now. Ramon Novarro represented the other related stereotype of the 1920s, the Latin lover. The most famous Latin lover was Rudolph Valentino, who was Italian. But Ramon, on the other hand, was definitely more Latin. He was the boy of every self-respecting 1920s girl's dream. His typically Anglo-Saxon good looks allowed him to reach the height of stardom in a time when the prevailing Mexican image was still the greaser. Throughout his silent film career, he played any number of characters, from the all-American sailor, to the French revolutionary, to the carefree Pacific Islander, to a villain from the indeterminate Germanic country of Ruritania, but he never actually played a Mexican role. The problem was that because of the various roles he played, the mostly positive Latin lover was never associated with the Latin American. Not that Ramon's heritage was detrimental, in fact it was exploited whenever possible. To the movie-going public, there was something spicy about being Mexican, as long as you didn't play one on the screen. And then came sound. While Ramon's fellow heavily accented matinee idols quickly faded into the background because of their now obvious foreignness, Ramon's career continued to flourish because of his lovely high tenor singing voice. He continued to play the same variety of roles because it didn't matter what sort of accent he had, so long as it was foreign, even if it was sometimes a little difficult to understand.
I suppose you're not a fraternity to start me off. You finished your rendezvous early. But I told you to get me a taxi. If I can't make you out.
But, as with most, Ramon's star had to fall eventually, and he was gradually pushed into the background. Meanwhile, back on the ranch...
Hold your hats, boys. Here we go again. The Latin type.
Hollywood was still cranking out exotic but tragically inaccurate films like Down Argentine Way from Fox. Trouble was, Argentina had a few problems with it. Not only was Carmen Miranda, who many Americans took from South America from, indeed Brazilian and Portuguese speaking, but nothing else about the film was Argentinian either, including leading lady Betty Grable. Flying Down to Rio was a welcome exception because it depicted the Brazilian capital as a thriving, diverse city it was. But in America, Latino actors were still sometimes forced to abandon their identity. One of the most famous examples is Margarita Cancino, who dyed her hair red and became Rita Hayworth. But with World War II good neighbor policies came a change.
Usted sí lo entiendo. Oh, I speak English.
Ramon Novarro returned to the screen in 1949, finally, as a real, and good, Mexican character.
Inspector General Ortega.
I'm very pleased to meet you.
Inspector General Ortega is Mexican, but he's not a villain, nor is he bumbling or lazy.
No hablo Spanish, so good.
I speak English good.
Unlike every other character, he is honest and competent, and let's face it, he's the only likable character in the whole darn movie. He's able to use the corrupt Americans' search for each other to mount his own covert investigation, letting them lead him to his ultimate goal. Inspector General Ortega is cunning without being evil, friendly without being oily, and it took Ramon until he was 50 years old to finally have this kind of role. The film career of Ramon Novarro parallels the changing attitudes towards Latinos during the silent and golden eras of cinema. From his first appearance on screen playing a bit greaser role, to becoming one of the most beloved actors of the 1920s, Ramon was a very important part of early film and a rare representative of the few Latino actors who made a name for themselves in Hollywood during this time. He never played a Mexican character at the height of his career. Nevertheless, his versatility and his talent ensured he would have a place among the stars.